Hello, welcome to Financial Insider Weekly. I'm your host, Michael Gray, CPA. My guest today is Bill Mitchell, and Bill is a certified public accountant who represents taxpayers in IRS collections, audits, and appeals, and before the U.S. Tax Court. He has offices in Santa Cruz and San Jose, California. He's also been licensed to practice before the United States Tax Court since 1978. Bill graduated from Santa Clara University in 1962, only yesterday.
That's right.
And after his service in the U.S. Army, he worked at the Internal Revenue Service from 1966 through 1971 and has worked in public accounting from 1971 to the present. Bill, thanks for joining me today.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Today I've asked Bill to provide some guidance about what to do if you're audited by the IRS. And so we're going to be covering highlights of a complex subject. This is sort of an introduction, but please consult with a qualified tax advisor about your situation. I think our main message is if you get audited, you probably need some help. So anyway, so we'll take it from there. All right, Bill, let's get into this a little bit. And mostly, don't worry about the cameras, just look at me. We're just having a conversation here. So when somebody gets a letter from the IRS, is that a reason to panic?
Well, you can if you want. It's not going to do much good. But no, I mean, if you get a letter from the IRS, it's usually pointed at one issue, and whether you respond to it on your own or have a professional represent you with that response, I guess depends a little bit on whether you did the tax return and did it on your own, in which case probably you might take a shot at responding on your own. But if you've had a professional prepare your tax return, then it might be a good idea to at least touch base with a professional to get some coaching on how you respond and what you should do next.
Yeah. Now, in many cases, what's happening is that people are getting letters because there's like matching issues and things like this. Isn't that really the case? And so in many cases, you can sort of clarify the issue and say, this is where it is. What you're looking for in the tax return.
Right. Well, I've seen a case like that explode where an individual got stock options. He received stock options, and he did a same-day sale, which included the earnings in his W-2, and the question was he got a letter saying that you didn't report capital gains of an extraordinary amount, and he tried to do his own responses, and it just got worse and worse till finally they contacted me to get involved, and by that time we had to go for audit reconsideration because the matter had gone to assessment. So sometimes you have to realize as a taxpayer that maybe you're over your head very early, and to get professional help.
Yeah. So maybe a way to look at it, particularly from you and I as CPAs and so on, is that we sort of speak a common language with the IRS. We have a special language that we speak, and the framework is the Internal Revenue Code and regulations and rulings and so forth. And most people aren't really familiar with those things. They're really foreign to them. And when they're communicating with the IRS, it's very frustrating because, again, they're using a different language and talking to the IRS, and it seems like they're not making a connection. Like in that particular case that you were talking about, I mean, that should never have gotten to that point.
No, that's correct, because the individual kept responding that I've included this in my income, but there's an additional element that had to be reported on Schedule D, which is a capital gain section.
Right.
And virtually that's going to be a very small gain or a small loss, or maybe no gain or loss.
Yeah.
That part of it was left out, and that's the part that he didn't understand had to be addressed. And so there you go.
Yeah. So in this particular case, folks, on the stock options, we have a whole other program on that, but the basis or the cost that you use on that Schedule D for those stock options is going to be the option price plus the amount of ordinary income that's included in your wages in most cases. And when you add those together, especially if you do a same-day sale, that's going to be pretty close to the same amount
Right.
that you received. So there really should be little or no gain or loss. And in most cases, it's actually a small loss because you've got selling expenses. So I just don't leave you mystified related to that or hanging on your seat. Okay, well now the next question that people are going to ask is, why me? Why am I getting this notice?
Well, just as you mentioned, it could be
Right.
matching, or the IRS also has a scoring program that they use, and if the reportings on your tax return exceed those, that might be a reason to have it pulled for audit. So, and then again, there may be a program that they have. One of the programs that I'm very sensitive to right now is the issue with rental properties and real estate professionals.
Yeah.
And the IRS has a program on that where they're essentially denying the losses or limiting the losses on a rental property or a number of rental properties where the taxpayer is claiming to be a real estate professional.
Right. And again, we have a whole program on that, but what it comes down to is that the IRS has identified some issues that are sort of easy pickings,
Correct.
if you will. So it's very common. And so, for example, if you have somebody that's claiming to be a real estate professional, and meanwhile they're reporting, that W-2 income, maybe from another business or whatever, it's evident that you can't be a full-time employee in two different occupations, and so you're definitely vulnerable on that issue. I guess there's one other thing, and that is every once in a while somebody sort of calls to complain about a friend, or not a friend, but an enemy maybe,
Right.
to say that look, it seems to them that they may not be reporting some income.
Mm-hmm. That's
Yeah.
a difficult thing. When I was with the service, every now and then you'd get a letter like that, and depending upon the sophistication of the writings would determine whether you would pursue it, or if it just sounded like or looked like it was something that was bad friends or sour grapes. But even when you get letters like that and do the auditing or investigating process, sometimes it's what the allegation is and what they're
What's
trying
the
to
reality of
yeah,
the
in
situation.
reality it isn't even close.
Okay. All right, so here comes the next one, the good one, what we're sort of here all about. How do I decide if I should just handle the audit myself or to get help?
Well, I think we've covered that a little bit. You have to recognize pretty early whether you are over your head or not as an individual. I would say that in most cases, and I'm not trying to drum business for Bill Mitchell, but any practitioner, if your tax return has been prepared by a professional and now you're getting an audit from the IRS, you should at least touch base with the professional to see how to go about it. And I think in most cases, you've already addressed this, it's the tax speak that professionals have that can help to get the thing resolved, and that's what you're looking to do.
Right. Okay. So, and by the way, so if you're in the middle of an audit, okay, I think we can say it's perfectly okay for you to say, I think we need to stop here. It's evident to me now that I need help, and so we're going to have to continue this another time. Don't you agree?
Sure, that's exactly what should be done. Yeah.
So don't feel like once you've got this in process that you need to continue, and especially if it becomes evident to you that there are issues that are coming up that maybe may create some difficulties, especially if it's evident, maybe unreported income or questions and things like that. Again, maybe we're going beyond even the CPAs in most cases. You may need an attorney to get involved.
That's correct.
So a lot of people think about the psychology of this, and they think, if I bring a representative, doesn't that mean that the IRS is going to think I have something to hide?
No, not at all. In fact, I think it's pretty common these days that revenue personnel expect a professional to be involved, and they're always asking for the powers of attorney that allows the professional to speak on behalf of the taxpayer and allows the revenue service to address the issues with that professional. So I think that's a very common thing. At least in my experience, it's almost automatic.
Well, of course, you're the one that's doing it.
Yeah.
Okay, but but I've had people that that have raised this to me before. You know, they're concerned about this, and I think what it boils down to is, you know, what's more important, and really it's that that your rights need to be protected, and so you're entitled to representation, and in many cases it only makes good sense to get it, and so you know, it's one thing to be playing around with the tax software, although it makes us wince sometimes. I had one person that I was handling an audit, or trying to handle an audit, and this woman that I was helping out, her boyfriend had helped her by preparing the income tax returns. But every time that we would try to resolve an issue, he was trying to file another amended return. I said, this is tax return software. This is not a video game. Right. Okay, because he was treating it like a video game and like, oh, you can just do these. Mm-hmm. I said, no. I said, we have to have a place to work from. You've made a tax return. We've got a place to work from. Now we're going to go through and we're going to identify the issues and try to resolve them. So anyway, that's one of the things that gets frustrating as a professional when you're trying to work with people. You have to deal with the psychology of your client as well as of the agent. Okay, well, let's get into the next issue, and that is just who is qualified to represent a taxpayer before the IRS, and what does a representative contribute to this process?
Well, you have attorneys and CPAs such as you and I, actuaries and enrolled agents who can represent taxpayers. So what they lend to the whole thing is hopefully their expertise. You know, I've been doing this involved in taxation since 1966. I'm coming up to 50 years. Hopefully something has made an impact on me in the 50 years or coming 50 years. So,
yeah. So again, and to repeat, you know, again, the idea of speaking the same language, but also being aware a little bit of the rights and the issues and the laws that apply to the particular thing. But one thing that we're trying to point out here is that there are tax return preparers who are not any of these things. Currently, there is no particular qualification to put a shingle out as an individual tax return preparer. Isn't that right?
That's correct. I think the service was trying to establish that, and so far that hasn't been totally resolved. It seems to be a political football that's being bantied and kicked around.
Right. And so it may be that Congress is going to eventually intervene in this thing because the IRS was trying to basically establish qualifications for people even to prepare income tax returns. And there are some people that are voluntarily complying with the IRS's requirements, and they're actually getting some representation privileges from the IRS. So it's outside of the bailiwick that we just talked about. There's some return preparers that, again, it's not an enrolled agent, but they've registered as preparers with the IRS and have met certain continuing education requirements and so forth, examination requirements. So they are getting some ability to actually do representation, at least in an initial audit. All right. So I started this audit myself, an example here, or with a tax return preparer helping me. Okay, again, and I think now they're saying they're not going to even allow the tax return preparers to be there. This is something new. So in the past, like if you had an H&R Block person help you prepare a tax return, they said, well, I'll go with you, they're basically there as a witness.
Right.
Okay, but anyway, now the IRS is saying no, unless they meet our requirements, they're not going to even be able to sit with you in this examination. Well, anyway, at what point should I seek additional help?
Well, I think we've covered that a little bit, but I think you should probably, if the audit has already started, you're better advised to get good professional help, and because you don't know what's in back of an audit. You know, we mentioned earlier that you have the scoring of the IRS or a particular issue that the IRS has a crusade on. But the other thing that goes on with audits that I'm experiencing currently is you don't know what's behind the audit. For example, the IRS seems to be getting more and more involved at the audit level with regional counsel attorneys prompting the revenue agents and conducting the audit more or less in the background, and the agent is a little bit more of a puppet. And I've had that experience on about 3 or 4 cases now.
Wow.
And it's an issue that concerns me, because one of the things that the agents will tell you is that one agent told me they have a tax matters expert, and I had never heard of a tax matters expert. I called one of the supervisors at the service to say that I know and said, where is this animal, tax matters expert? And the response was, I never heard of such a thing. But what it ultimately came out to be was that there was a regional counsel attorney that was prompting the revenue agent on a particular issue and tutoring the agent as it went along. The difficulty for representation in that type of a situation is that the representative does not get direct contact with the regional counsel person that's prompting the revenue agent. So those issues are getting to be very difficult to resolve, because when there's a disagreement on it, the thing is more than likely going to go beyond the audit level to either appeals or even a tax court. And maybe we'll cover that later on, but that's one of the real concerns when you have an audit is if there may be more. That might be the tip of the iceberg. There may be a lot below the surface that isn't being presented, and an uninitiated person to this wouldn't recognize that.
Yeah. So at this point, I think I've mentioned something, and that is, if somebody shows you a badge and says that they're from the Criminal Investigation Division of the IRS, what you do is...
Oh, you stop right there. That's time to get a criminal attorney involved, and you've gone far beyond the civil audit situation. But that wasn't what I was addressing in that prior.
Well, I understand, but what I'm saying though is that sometimes these things can happen. Is that you can have an audit. It seems to be initially innocent or whatever. Everything seems to be normal. And then suddenly, you've got a development that happens like this, again, and particularly the criminal investigation thing. So then what you do, again, is you shut up.
Right.
And then that means I need legal counsel, and you don't say anything else from that point.
Yeah.
So anyway, just be aware of that. But yes, there can be issues that aren't apparent to a lay person, to a person who's not trained as a tax person, and so that is a reason again for having representative in there. Hopefully, you'll recognize again, like you said, that I'm getting in over my head here.
Yeah. Well, the agents are pretty good about that. It's been my experience. They will tell you that they have someone that's prompting them. So, but that also makes it difficult to resolve an issue at the agent level.
Mm-hmm.
So,
okay, are there items that are requested by the IRS that taxpayers are not required to provide?
I can't think of too many. I mean, I don't get into, privacy and what is it, the Fifth Amendment or that type of thing. But generally, they're only going to ask for things that are that are pertinent to the exam, and so I've never encountered that in my dealings with the revenue agents.
Okay, well, I'll leave it at that for now.
Yeah.
So sometimes you ask, or excuse me, the IRS agent asks for certain information. You do your best to provide it, and then they ask for more information. That's really frustrating. Is it? Can you talk about that issue?
It is, but you know, if you're going to resolve the audit, you've got to try and give them everything that they're, you know, that's going to satisfy them. That hey, they've looked at this every which way and they're okay with it. You know, one of the things that we're countering in audits is that taxpayers are producing logs or diaries of travel, and sometimes the documents that support the travel have to be asked for, as opposed to just the diary itself. Well, you know, if that's going to satisfy the agent, then provide those documents. And I'm finding also that diaries are being challenged more. We got back to this issue of the real estate professional, where hours are supposed to be documented, and they don't necessarily have to be contemporaneously put down in a diary. But still, that's an area that's really ripe for challenge. So I would certainly endorse anybody that's keeping that type of diary or log, whether it's travel and entertainment or whether it's hours of real estate, to, even though it's not specifically required, make them contemporaneously every day. That you finish the day of that particular activity, write it down.
Right. So again, I mean, part of what's happened is, in this real estate professional context, is people are coming in with these diaries, and they're saying, again, I've worked 1,500, 2,000 hours in this real estate business. Meanwhile, again, they've got another profession that's going on, and basically the judge is looking at the log and saying, I don't believe you.
That's exactly what's happening in most
yeah.
of the cases. That's what they're saying. They're saying that they're not credible. But there can be situations. There's one that's a hot button item right now in that area. It's called mortgage brokers, where an individual can be getting a W-2 as a mortgage broker and have several rental activities at the same time. And the service is coming out and saying, well, your mortgage broker time does not count.
Yeah, that's not a real estate professional.
Well, that's what the service, they have a chief counsel advice to that effect.
Yeah.
And that's a very low authority on the substantial authority table. So that's an issue that's probably going to hit the courts at some point and get resolved. Right now, the service is pressing that very vigorously.
Yeah. So many real estate professionals do have real estate licenses, and so it is deemed in some cases to be a real estate activity. We'll see what happens down the road. Like you said, the IRS position currently is that that is not a real estate activity because it has to do with finance.
Right, except it's finance
Of
tied to real estate,
Yeah,
and
of
that's the issue. And also, there was a tax court case, I think it's a tax court memorandum case, where a real estate loan agent was deemed to be a real estate professional. That was the good news. The bad news is that same taxpayer claimed, well, I don't need to have a diary, and that was the point of which the case turned.
Okay, we only have about 3 minutes. When you get an IRS audit notice and it gives a date and a location, are you required to accept those?
No, you can. They're pretty good about changing it. I just had one recently where the agent's in San Mateo, and he put down, be in my office at San Mateo, and the way traffic is on 101, I said maybe we could have it here in San Jose. It'd be a lot easier for you to come to my office in San Jose than for me to fight the traffic going up 101. He was fine with that. So yeah, that's easily changed, and they're very agreeable to it.
Yeah. So it's good to know that, you know, again, you're not stuck, you know, when you have certain things on IRS notices. And sometimes you can even get them to buy off on some of the issues for the questions, I think, you know, depending on the case. But anyway, so just bear those things in mind. You know, things aren't necessarily written in stone. Bill, I think we're getting close to being out of time here. Maybe you'd like to throw out maybe a final thought as we conclude our little discussion here. We're going to do a couple more interviews one related to appeals and so forth, so we'll leave those issues to that time.
Well, if you want a case resolved at audit, the suggestions I would make is have your T's crossed and your I's dotted. Have as much documentation as you can to support everything. And if you have logs, make them contemporaneous and to support it by documents. So that's the single biggest thing that I could give to trying to get an audit resolved at the agent level.
Yeah, I basically ask clients to put a stack together, if you will, and go sort of point by point and and have
Right.
have
Yeah.
it, and really, if, as much as possible, to document the items on the tax return itself. You know, to have a document there to support it. So, so that can help you out in this process. Okay, folks. So we're just about out of time here. This is a little, maybe as painful as going to the dentist, but but you can get through this. In most cases, again, if you can answer the agent's questions, you can get through these and get out fairly efficiently. But when you have businesses and so forth, it's going to be a much bigger process. So it really depends on the issues that you're dealing with. We'll see you next time on Financial Insider Weekly.